There have been a lot of different Specters in Twisted Metal history, from Charlie Brown ghost costumes to... No! Ah! And today we are going to look at every iteration of Specter in the Twisted Metal series. Starting way back in 1995, our experience began. A white automobile with a young man posing for his school photograph, having a bio stating, "Scott Campbell is a restless spirit who hopes Calypso's contest can make him whole again." And if you weren't aware, Scott Campbell was a co-creator of this game, which is a nice cameo, kind of, since I'm sure it was his idea to put himself in the game. After selecting the co-creator, you were given a very fast speed, more so than practically every other character on the roster, only second to Crimson Fury, I believe. So speed is going to be the key to success. Levels like the arena may not be a good time. It's genuinely terrible if you are required to beat Hammerhead or Darkseid in this level. Thankfully, it's the only one where this problem is truly exacerbated. Every other one has areas for you to utilize the speed of Specter. As long as you stay out of small corridors, you will be free to zip around and shoot enemies at your heart's content, slowly chipping everyone down, which can take time. We are not able to abuse the 5-year-old playing with Hot Wheels playstyle by smashing headfirst into anyone we see. If Specter attempts that, he will just become extra dead because he's already a ghost. This unfortunately does bring Specter lower on the tier list for me. Ideally, you'd want a character who can dish out both good ramming and has a decent speed, like Roadkill. It's just rough in this game when it comes to armor versus speed. I feel armor just wins by default due to the overall damage output of ramming, unless you're talking about Sweet Tooth, because that character is a piece of trash. I've always felt speed in this game can only get you so far, since most weapons do little to no damage outside of homing and power missiles, and that's where the special weapon comes in. That's kind of weird. This was the birth of the Ghost Missile, which unfortunately just has a mind of its own and does whatever it wants to most of the time. You'd expect the missile to be a fire and forget attack like every other game afterwards, when it's just not. You can drive by, press the button, and expect to get some damage off, but it rarely ever happens. The missile will just spin around in the wall and then time out before contact is even made. So this forces you to be more accurate when you're shooting the missile to get the best chance of it connecting, which goes completely against what the Ghost Missile is for. You'd figure as long as the enemy is on your screen, whoever is selected on the top bar, within a reasonable distance, the missile will track and hit them, where sadly it just doesn't. Even when you try to be accurate, you will still notice some tracking issues, but thankfully it's a bit more consistent. When it actually does hit, you will realize the damage is not great, doing around the same as a fire missile. But on the positive side, we do get them back around every 20 seconds or so, allowing us to spam the missiles. This was a quite difficult playthrough, honestly. I found Specter to be lacking in what makes characters stronger in this game. Also, the fact if you touch anyone that's not Mr. Grimm or Crimson Fury, you're probably going to die. So you are required to play in a manner of slowly peppering enemies down, stocking up on homing and power missiles, making this playthrough kind of drag out. You don't really have too much in your hand here, so your enjoyment is predicated on whether you enjoy this type of playstyle or not. After you put up with the hogwash, blowing minion to smithereens after 35 attempts, thankfully we are able to see Specter get his wish, coming back into the living world with some of the greatest acting anyone has ever seen.
What? No. Don't. Please don't.
I give it, and I take it away. Try again next year, driver.
Calypso, no. Please don't.
No! Ah! All we can do is take this moment to thank Scotty for all of his hard work. This ending fits great with Twisted Metal, wishes for life and gets it taken away. Of course, you could question why Scott just stands there instead of attempting to run or avoid the bullets, but unfortunately that question will never be answered. To be blunt, in my opinion, this character isn't really that great. Specter, of course, has a good car design here, a classic little automobile, laying the groundwork of what's to come with the gameplay, and as we'll see shortly, Specter could really be improved. I feel if Ghost Missile was slightly more powerful, allowing players to utilize this to get more damage off would go such a long way, especially due to how abhorrent the tracking is. They could have made it slightly stronger. I barely ever used it throughout my playthrough unless I had nothing else in my inventory, just hoping to get a little something out of it, where sadly you just don't against most vehicles unless they have armor like Mr. Grimm, who dies if you sneeze on him. It appears the folks at Twisted Metal headquarters realized how Specter stunk pretty bad in Twisted Metal 1 and decided to kick Scott out for Twisted Metal 2 and then bring in Ken from Street Fighter to drive the fabled automobile, a car design in the same realm as the first, and we can see Ken here being revamped after a midlife crisis, talking about how when he was a kid, he was a loser and he wants to stop being one. Maybe this resonated with someone to make them pick Specter and see what this tall tale would be. Immediately upon driving around with Specter, you'll notice the needed improvement from the first iteration. In Twisted Metal 2, Specter is a great experience, sharing a similar gameplay loop of driving around, utilizing speed, weaving in and out of battle, trying to keep your distance if possible. Unless you need to show one of the bigger cars who the real killer of Camp Crystal Lake is, you can definitely try that. Thankfully, ramming was a bit more balanced out for Twisted Metal 2, so that alone does not dictate how a character will perform, just like the game before it. Weapons across the board have gotten an increased effectiveness, allowing for a faster paced playstyle to actually work better as well. The best part of all this is that our special isn't atrocious either. Ghost Missile was improved with tracking and damage, making it actually feel like a special weapon. There is an actual use for it in this game that's not gambling, hoping the thing will connect with an enemy. Unless you are thousands of miles away from your target, the missile is going to connect with someone. Levels like New York are perfect for abusing Specter's special, also being the most irritating level to fight Specter on as well, but thankfully since we're playing as him, we don't need to fight him. The Ghost Missile will fly through buildings, getting easy damage on opponents that aren't even on the same plane as you. Twisted Metal 2 just really gave us that increase of power the first needed. All of those shortcomings were rectified, allowing Kenneth to be a pretty damn good character. After we utilize our tactics battling through the hood, we will kill Sweet Tooth's dad and come face to face with Calypso, where Kenneth wants the entire world to see his face. Of course, he gets his wish. Calypso turns his face into a bowl of paper mache, stretching it across the sky so all of the citizens can look up and see him. I remember as a kid, watching this ending was sort of unsettling, maybe due to the animation of Calypso grabbing the driver's face here. I don't know why, it just looks kind of weird to me. But at this point in my life, I definitely prefer the last game's live action ending because of how horrible the acting was. Regardless, this will suffice for a good Specter ending. There isn't really more to delve into when it comes to playing as Specter because it's essentially the first game, but good. Every aspect has been improved or gameplay changes have been made, allowing him to shine a lot more on the roster. Ramming overall is weaker, weapons do more damage, the special is actually a special. He's more balanced and more fun to use in this game. Unfortunately, it took a whole new game for us to reach this point for Specter, but at least we got there. Twisted Metal 3 is the big game where Specter returned once again, sporting what is a lot of people's favorite model for him actually. People can say what they want to about 989 games, but they did a good job when it comes to the car designs. The driver was also changed once again from Ken Masters to Lance Wilder, the celebrity man. He will sign autographs, there's plenty of him to go around, and people like his bitchin' hot rod. Wonderful. This all was surely enough to perk a player's interest somewhere in the world, where we have on paper the same gameplay loop established from 1995, driving around, getting weapons, chipping people down with them, using maneuverability and speed to defeat our opponents. But this is a 989 game, so how we actually play is going to be slightly different. This entry doesn't have the whole keeping weapons feature from level to level, which was how you'd make Specter more powerful in Twisted Metal 1 and 2, stocking up as much as possible, starting the next level with an arsenal of tricks to unleash on whoever comes near you. Here, we cannot do that, so it does remove a bit of the depth while playing as him. Depending on who you ask, this can be a deal breaker, but I've always felt 3 gives us enough weapons to not have this be a true detriment for how we play the game. 3 just adds an extra layer, essentially, since we need to keep getting weapons for each level, doesn't really matter that much to me. It's just obviously important to mention. We of course have the faster speed than most other vehicles, which will help a lot, especially when playing on pure lunacy, which is this game's hard mode. Twisted Metal 3 does not have a shield, so characters who are faster actually have the best chances of survival, funnily enough. If you get caught with your pants down, you're dead, so you need to maximize your evasiveness power to survive in these streets, making Specter a much better character than he otherwise would be. Ramming is also not really a factor either, so that's never a worry. If you accidentally crash into minion or whoever, just fly away and you'll be fine. These gameplay changes work into Specter's favor, similar to Twisted Metal 2. Unfortunately, the Ghost Missile kind of sucks. Not with the tracking, just the damage this time around. It's not enough to ruin the experience. Just dealing slightly more damage than a homing missile doesn't really bother me here because of the speed and handling making up for not having a shield. Plus, Specter is one of the characters that doesn't flip over very often, which comes in handy for obvious reasons. I've noticed Roadkill, Thumper, and Specter all share this quality. For anyone who hasn't played Twisted Metal 3, it helps a ton with getting used to the physics engine here. And as I'm sure we're aware, the physics engine is kinda wonky in this game. After utilizing our tactics, defeating the ultimate battle with Primeval, we are given the spectacular ending that we have all been waiting for, surely gripping the edges of our seats in joy, ready and excited for it. We see Lance wishes to become famous and on TV all the time. I thought he was already famous, maybe he was pretending before, but we see him get stuck inside of an alien contraption by reptilian shapeshifters as he bangs on the invisible wall to escape his tomb, which appears to be something he cannot do. And that's it. Specter and Twisted Metal 1, 2, and 3 are all very similar from a gameplay perspective, so I tried to mention things that weren't present in previous iterations. This is not a bad thing, since each of them had an expected playstyle becoming memorable, whether that is through their design, gameplay, or ending, of course varying from good to bad on a grandiose scale compared to other characters, but when you compare them to each other, it's a consistent character you're able to identify with, which is nice that it wasn't strayed away from, until Small Brawl. We did not see Specter in Twisted Metal 4. Small Brawl was the next PS1 title he was in, and yes, I know Small Brawl released after Black. I'm just doing it here because it's the last title on PS1. Here we get to see Specter as a young boy, being called the shy young man, searching for his long-lost father. A player will question who his father is, picking Specter to find out the answer to this riddle, where we start the game up, and again, our car moves fast, handles really well. That goes without saying. This time though, Specter's special was changed into these light blue birdies from badminton. The only word I could ever use for these things is worthless, just completely worthless. Instead of a ghost missile, which moved quite fast, went through walls, and did a sufficient amount of damage, depending on the game of course, these things do go through walls, but they move unreasonably slow and do so little damage you can barely see what you are dishing out here. It's genuinely like that pathetic. It puts us in a very hairy area, or a Captain Grimm situation if you will. Our armor is very weak and our special is worthless, giving us only speed and handling to work with, which is nice, but not much in the grand scheme of things when you compare Specter to other characters. Small Brawl in general can be a quite janky game when it comes to the core gameplay sometimes, with general controls and button inputs. There are some problems. I've always felt the slower characters are much better in this game because of this. And besides that fact, if you really wanted to play as a faster driving character, there are just better options that have some sort of damage output compared to Specter. A playthrough on hard mode with Specter in Small Brawl is really hard, considering the beefiness of bosses. You're going to have a miserable time dealing with it. Even normal mode, this can be an issue since you don't have that much to play around with. A special that stinks, armor that stinks, it's just a rotten go at the game. I really do try my best to avoid playing characters that are horrible because it's not really fun to use them, but if you do decide to unleash the beast and get a mouthful of Specter from Small Brawl, you are given a throwback of an ending. Calypso and Bartholomew, I'll call him since he's not given a name, meet up. Somehow, Calypso has access to the Ken Masters automobile from Twisted Metal 2, where the keys are given to Bartholomew, giving a callback to that version of Specter, which is a nice touch, attempting to tie all the stuff together a little bit in the franchise. Unfortunately, there isn't really much to say about this character outside of him being quite bad. The established handling and speed are here, so there's no point of delving into that again. The one standout Small Brawl's iteration has is just an awful special, which is not something anyone should want a character like Specter to stand out for. I'm not even sure why his special attack was changed. It feels similar to if Mortal Kombat removed Scorpion's spear attack. Just confuses me, honestly. The only possible bit of enjoyment you can have is if you want to go through the game on hard mode. Similar to Warthog, it can be satisfying to win with a piece of junk character. Outside of that though, staying away is the smartest move. Twisted Metal Black is where things get serious with the greatest gaming stories in the history of man. Only one could dream to comprehend the otherworldly words dropped onto us from the hidden secrets of the Roman Empire, so we can only try to wrap our heads around this. The driver of Specter was changed to Bloody Mary, obviously playing off of the one and only. Our story opens up, as always, with her inside of a jail, standing there in the corner like a mannequin. I never realized until now how easy it could have been to make her bust out a Mortal Kombat 3 reptile pose here, only if they went that route, but unfortunately they decided not to. We get to hear the love life of Mary, her getting picked on, being lonely, jealous of her friends getting a baseball frank and she wasn't, so if she competed in the ultimate contest of Twisted Metal, Calypso would find her a name brand hot dog. As we break out the gates of the asylum into the wilderness, we are given a pretty damn good character. I don't really care for the model that much, it's probably the worst in the series honestly. Outside of this, Black's iteration of Specter could easily be considered the Prestige Master version. In all previous entries, Ghost Missile was a strong tracking missile that went through walls and did decent to low damage, depending on the game. For whatever reason in Black, they decided to keep the going through walls thing, having great tracking, but beefed up the damage a ton. It is very impactful here, making this one of my favorite specials in the entire game. We of course have the great speed and handling that's expected with Specter, but having a special this strong goes a long way, especially in a game that can be as brutal with difficulty as Black. Doing drive-bys with it will always deliver a noticeable chunk of damage regardless of their armor, helping to eat your opponents alive. The only downside is that the missile moves a bit slower, so you need to be slightly more accurate with it, just like the first game. But the damage is so good, finding moments and timing the missile right is completely worth the trouble. I've found the special works well enough against Minion 2. You'll be able to break a panel quite easily with it. Too bad we can't shoot it through the shield, because that would be an even better way to set up the midpoint cutscene. Being in the forbidden position we always somehow end up in regardless of the character, giving us some more backstory on why Mary is so angry. Being a part of yet another wedding as a bridesmaid, watching some street trash get married. The little bitch, which is the nickname Mary gave to Kristen here, she had the balls to throw that bouquet of flowers to Mary. Her voice sounds angry, but her face says otherwise. We find out Mary is supposed to be on medication, but is not. Getting memories of the elementary school crush saying, "Mary, Mary, quite contrary, you're just an ugly fat cow." If I was Mary, I would have brought that kid to Suplex City, but she just sat there in the mud, scarred by the whole situation. This brings Mary to her boiling point and grabs the closest thing to her, that being a little knife on the table to cut cake or whatever other foods are there. She fat shames Kristen, kills her, steals her dress, and wears it forever. But she is basically calling herself fat because she is wearing Kristen's dress. Maybe she doesn't realize that. I don't know. Mary wakes up ready to kill and defeat the rest of this contest to get her wish of a person who will finally like her for the very first time. Where I found the next level to be annoying, depending on the weapons you have, being stuck in a close quarters area can be a pain. Stocking up on minions fight is almost required for this level to go smoothly. Until the boat docks, you won't have much room to play around with, so you need to be really careful. Outside of this, a playthrough with Specter goes pretty well. For my money, I think this is the best Specter in the series. It feels the gameplay was truly perfected here to make everything work. That special weapon got me out of so many hairy situations. Anyone who tried to oppose me dropped dead, just like Warhawk and his cop friends dropped to the pavement and burned to death after the ultimate battle, where we can see the ending, bringing the merry search for name brand Frank's era to a close. Mary waltzes into Calypso's humble abode, demanding to see the man who loves her, which is apparently a car crash dummy. We can see that it has a scar on its head as well. The only thing I could guess is their aim was to say the guy revolted her that much he needed to be changed just to accept Mary. She goes over to him, he picks up Martha to whisper something in her ear and tells her, "I will never love you." She gets very angry, then she kills him, which I honestly think was the wrong move. That guy should have power bombed her into the ground and said, "Mary, Mary, quite contrary, you're just a big fat cow." Then we find out Calypso brought in the elementary school crush as an adult. I think it would have been a more interesting twist rather than us getting a very expected ending. We are playing a game that's all about grotesque stuff, so obviously the ending isn't going to be happy. It was just a missed opportunity to me. And this brings our playthrough to a close, where I honestly wanted to keep playing as Specter because the gameplay loop is just great with the character, giving a very similar style to Mr. Grimm, which is a lot of fun to me. I think making Ghost Missile a bit stronger just really worked here. There isn't much of a downside to Specter in Black, maybe the armor, but that's expected since the character needs to be balanced out. Even still, it's not that big of a deal. A battle for the best Specter undoubtedly would come down between Twisted Metal 2 and Black. There's no way any others could even compete with them, not even the final one, which came in Twisted Metal Head-On, driven by yet another driver. Specter was in 6 out of 8 games and has 6 different drivers, by the way. Chucky Floop is the driver in Head-On, yet another movie star adjacent character, ready to compete and become rich, driving a car that looks very similar to Twisted Metal 2, having that blue stripe down the middle. Sadly, the model's color is sort of washed out. Twisted Metal 2 was a very vibrant, brighter white, while Head-On looks like a white floor that hasn't been mopped in over a decade. After you select the one and only Specter, you'll realize we're ending with a character that's sort of lukewarm, obviously having the classic Head-On character issues, armor turning you into an otherworldly being, machine gun upgrades allowing you to defeat anyone in seconds. There isn't really much to delve into when it comes to gameplay, aside from one noticeable issue, which is how bad the Ghost Missile is compared to everyone else's special weapon. Even with the charge upgrade, for how long the player needs to charge it, the damage you deal is kind of pathetic, giving off small brawl vibes of damage. Granted, you probably won't notice this because your machine gun upgrade is the true special weapon anyways. Outside of that, the best way to describe this is just a car combat video game playthrough. The captivating playstyle of Specter from other games is just gone here, so he feels just like all the other characters, just slightly worse if you hone in on the special's effectiveness. After going through the Twisted Metal Head-On clown show, we reach our ending, where Chucky has an age-old classic play on wishes, being parallel to asking for $1 million. Chucky asks for money, where he gets so much he drowns in it and dies. Surely this is enough to get a knee slapper out of someone. And that's really all I have to say about Twisted Metal Head-On Specter. I always hate talking about characters from this game, unless we have something that's really gripping to work with, like Slam having a special that grabs people from a distance, or ATV who is just horrendous. Specter here is the most vanilla Specter, and there's nothing else to say. And that is every version of Specter in Twisted Metal history, who really shared a similar aura throughout the entirety of the series. You always knew what to expect, outside of Small Brawl where he was slightly changed with his special. I don't think Specter being so similar in all 6 games the character was a part of was a bad thing. It created a very consistent or safe pick as your first run through of whichever game you were playing. You know what the character's strengths and weaknesses are going to be. So with all of this said, what are your thoughts on Specter, and which do you think is the best in the series? As always, make sure to leave all of your thoughts in the comments below.